It's Wednesday, it's 11:15 and we're live in Westminster.
Our new triple lock, which will guarantee each and every year a rise in the basic state pension in line with earnings, prices, or a 2.5% increase, whichever is the greater.
That was 15 years ago. Now economists say the promise will cost 3 times what was predicted. So is it affordable?
It's like everything else. Once they start something, it will rise every year.
If it's going to help and keep the places tidy and provide extra for everybody, then I think, yeah, go for it.
A tourism tax is introduced in Wales. Will it put people off holidaying there?
We can't go further on pay this year, not least because they had the highest pay rise of the entire public sector.
What do we want? Pay restoration. When do we want it? Now!
As doctors in England vote to strike again, we'll bring together a medic and a government minister. All that and Prime Minister's questions, which we'll bring to you live at noon. Joining us today, Labour MP Natalie Fleet, Conservative MP Sarah Bull and political commentators Sonia Soda and Emily Sheffield. This is Politics Live. Let's start with a couple of the headlines focusing on the first report from the inquiry into the Post Office scandal. The Mirror saying that the Post Office scandal has had a tragic toll, talking about the 13 victims who took their own lives. And the Daily Mail saying that the Post Office has blood on its hands over the toll of 13 suicides. Well, yesterday in the House of Commons, the Tory MP Andrew Mitchell had this to say.
Isn't it about time that the institutions of the state got out the handcuffs and held the tax-funded villains who perpetrated this monstrous injustice to full and total account?
So, Natalie, he's very strong there, saying it's time to get out the handcuffs.
I can't believe what's happened to our postmasters, and I'm really pleased that we're quadrupling the compensation, quadrupling the speed at which they get compensation. I went into my local post office the other day in Shirebrook, and it was such a lovely place. They were so embedded in the community. And the first thought was, what if this had happened to them? It's absolutely horrendous, and it's right that they get more compensation faster, and that's what we're doing, and I'm thrilled to see it.
And what about the accountability, though? He's talking about criminal charges, about prosecutions of those who were responsible.
Where charges can be brought, then, you know, that's the responsibility of the state to do that.
Sarah, do you agree?
I think that would be the next stage, because obviously this was the first volume, and I think once they've finished doing this full inquiry, that's when we can start to move on to if there is any criminal charges. I mean, obviously we've got to get justice for the postmasters, and it's a bigger issue that we need to be tackling.
I mean, do you think it's likely or possible that that could happen? I mean, they probably don't have much confidence in the system, do they?
I appreciate they may not have confidence in the system, but I do have confidence in our justice system, and I do think that once we've gone through these cases fully, then there will be justice that will be served.
Sonia, do you think there should be criminal charges?
I mean, obviously that is for the CPS. Certainly my understanding of reading the evidence is that I would hope that there could be. The sequencing is an issue in terms of delays, which is that you've got to have this public inquiry, and then the police investigation and prosecutions, they can't really proceed properly until after the inquiry is concluded. And that's sort of the way we do things here. It is unfortunate, though, and I completely understand. If you're a postmaster who's been sent to prison for something that you absolutely did not do and hounded, and your life has been made a living hell, and then, you know, you read that it could be 28 onwards that we see any prosecutions, that does feel like a really long time. And then the other thing I would say is that we're not very good, I think, in the UK at ensuring that there are other sorts of consequences as well. And I'm talking about a company like Fujitsu who are involved in this. You know, they promised that they weren't going to bid for any more government contracts, but we know that they found ways of bidding for more very valuable government contracts. How on earth is that allowed to happen?
Emily?
I agree with Sonia. I want to move this. Yes, there are people within the Post Office that need to be held account, and like you, I totally agree. It feels very distressing that we can't actually start these criminal prosecutions. We're having to wait. Is that because of our laws? I'm not actually clear why we can't start criminal prosecutions just because an inquiry is going on. And quite frankly, that should be changed as far as I'm concerned. Why should anyone have that kind of justice delayed? But Fujitsu, it's always talk about the Post Office, but my understanding is that certainly in the beginning, not in the latter years, but in the beginning they trusted Fujitsu, and did Fujitsu know or not? You know, I do not think they should be. They seem to be sort of constantly sort of moved out of the spotlight. Well, they should not be moved out of the spotlight. And as you say, my knowledge is they hold government contracts. So again, I think justice is very important. But first, I agree, we must get money. We must get compensation. It is utterly shocking. We read it day after day. And my final point is, I have heard way too many very senior political leaders on both sides of the parties go, oh, I mean, why did this not come across my desk? And you're like, you were the Chancellor, you were the Prime Minister. How did this not come across your desk? And that, a scandal of this size, why did it not come across those desks? And every political party needs to be thinking about that.
The Fujitsu question there about whether they should still have government contracts, do you think they should?
I think all government contracts, it's really important that we make sure they go to the right people, and any contracts that are handed out now, we make sure that they're, you know, we're procuring in the right way.
So are Fujitsu the right people?
I don't know enough about Fujitsu to be able to comment on that.
Do you think they should wait for the inquiry, or do you think they should be stopped from bidding for government contracts?
Well, I think there will be questions about whether they should be bidding for future contracts. Obviously, you have to contractually look at what the contracts that they're in at the moment. I do obviously have concerns about this. This was the greatest miscarriage of justice, and we cannot let that. It's unforgivable, and we can't let that happen again. And we just need to be much faster with how we're dealing with it. But then there's a question for all of us, and I think it goes across all different departments and all different areas. Are we entering into the best contracts? Have we got the right people there? It's a bigger question across government.
And I think there's a bigger question as well, not just with this, but with other scandals and inquiries like the infected blood scandal. We seem to just be very slow in this country at sort of putting things right, making people get compensation. I think there are questions, bigger questions about how the state machinery works around all this stuff.
Right, let's move on to talk about pensions. There's been a lot of chat about this this week. This BBC News headline saying that the UK's pension triple lock is to cost 3 times more. That was from a report from the Office for Budget Responsibility. That is the economic forecaster, talking about that promise that was brought in by George Osborne, as we saw a little bit earlier. Let's talk now to David Gawke. You separately have chaired an inquiry for the Institute for Fiscal Studies into the affordability of pensions. First of all, just remind us what the triple lock is, and then tell us what you discovered.
So the triple lock is a policy whereby the state pension increases by the higher of average earnings, inflation, or 2.5%. And so depending on what the data is in any one particular year, the state pension increases by that rate. That was introduced, as you say, by George Osborne in 2010. But because we've had such volatility in terms of inflation and earnings, that has proven to be more expensive than we thought it was going to be. It has increased the value of the state pension. But if you look ahead, we don't quite know how expensive it's going to be because it just depends upon the data. But potentially it could be costing £40 billion by 2050. And in those circumstances, not only is it expensive, not only is it unpredictable, but it is just not a rational way of increasing the state pension. So what the IFS argued, and as you say, I chaired the steering group for this review, was that we essentially, politicians need to work out what's the percentage of average earnings that the state pension should be. It's just above 30% at the moment. We should work out what the percentage should be, get to that target, and then come off the triple lock and then increase earnings in the long term in line with increase pensions in line with average earnings, but ensuring that in no one year is it below the rate of inflation. And that would be a much more logical and affordable way to proceed with the state pension.
I mean, you were a minister at the time when George Osborne brought this in, I think. Do you think it was a mistake?
I think you could question whether it was the right thing to do. There was a case for increasing the state pension, but I certainly think whether it was the right thing to do then, it's the right thing to get off the triple lock now. It's not going to happen in this Parliament. All the political parties essentially signed up to it in this Parliament. But what I hope the political parties will do is say, look, here's the target level, and then get off that, and then we can have something more affordable. Because as we heard from the OBR yesterday, as you've made reference to, Vicky, we have got real pressures on the public finances. And if we're looking ahead over future decades, we are in an unsustainable position, and some difficult choices have to be made sooner rather than later.
OK, stay with us while I just ask you, Natalie, whether you think that the triple lock is affordable now.
We've got a manifesto commitment to keeping it. So it means £470 extra for pensioners this year. It's absolutely the right thing.
Is that the right priority?
When they've paid into the system for so long, they now get out what they need. What I have found since coming into government is that in 2019 we offered lots of things around public finances, and the public laughed at us. And what we're doing now is we're saying we're going to take really difficult decisions in this first year that stabilises public finances, that makes sure the economy is fixed and those foundations are secure. We've also been able to then prioritise the money to make sure that we've got 4 million extra NHS appointments, that children are getting fed when they go to school at dinner time.
A lot of your colleagues actually would like to see more put into eradicating child poverty, for example.
I am a child that was taken out of poverty under the last Labour government. There is nothing more that I would like than this Labour government doing stuff about child poverty. We've got the review coming. I understand it is going to be difficult to put money into that. I want to see money to put into that, but the government...
At the moment, you're prioritising pensioners.
The country have to trust us with their finances. They have to make sure we have fixed those foundations. We're now making sure that we can invest in all the areas we want to, so that those pensioners can have a pride in their country and see the next generation is going to do better than they did. That's all anybody wants, and that's a strong Labour value that I absolutely believe in. We have to get this right, and keeping the triple lock is absolutely the right thing for now, so that we can then invest and make sure that our young people do better.
I mean, David, as you pointed out, the parties all seem to be committed to this until the end of the Parliament. I mean, can you see any scenario where they go back on that?
I think not in this Parliament. I think it would be very difficult for political parties. I personally think they made a mistake by pledging to do that before the last election, but that's where we are. I think the hope has to be that political parties face up to the realities. The way that the pensions bill is currently growing is unaffordable. It is unsustainable. We have got to get off that position, otherwise we will bankrupt the country. And I think there are other points one can make about the public finances as well. But this is one that political parties do need to be honest with the British public. We do need to face up with this. I think there is a route through, which is, as I say, set a target. Once we reach it, we then come off the triple lock. It would still be the case that the state pension would be protected, not just in real terms, but also go up in line with earnings, which over the long term should be higher. And that, I think, is a perfectly justifiable position, but it is not responsible. Let's not talk about so much this Parliament, but let's not think it is in any way sustainable that we do this forever. We simply cannot keep the triple lock in the long or even the medium term.
Sarah, you've got to be honest with people. It's not affordable. You're bankrupting the country by sticking to these pledges.
I think it's a very valid point about we have to have honest conversations, but that is not just about pensions. It is wider. It is about the entire welfare state and what you think the role of the government is in all of that.
Most politicians sitting in your seats don't seem to be able to be honest about that.
And I think we often get into conversations and it pits groups against each other, and I think that's the problem. We're not pitting anyone against each other. Pensions are just as important as young people, as just important as health, and there is always competing priorities. And look, we're very proud of our record. When we first introduced the triple lock, it resulted in the state pensions gone up over £3,500 since we were in office, and it lifted more than 200,000 pensioners out.
Do you think it's time to look at it? Is it time to at least have a look at it?
Well, I think all of the parties are saying we are looking at our finances going forward, but we're committed to the triple lock as it stands.
Sonia?
I mean, I really do think it does need to be looked again, and it's all very well to say, well, we shouldn't be pitting groups against each other, but the fact of the matter is there is a finite amount of money that's raised through taxes, and we need to think about our priorities. The Social Market Foundation, which is a think tank, looked at the cost of going from a triple lock to a double lock, so basically where pensions rise either by earnings or by inflation, but you drop the 2.5% bet. And that would save quite a bit of money over the long term. The issue is that politicians doing it would take a massive political hit in the here and now, and it saves quite a modest amount over the next 5 years. They estimate around 2.6 billion. But the fact of the matter is that pensions the state pension was at a higher proportion of earnings. That dropped over a number of years from the 1970s to 2008. The triple lock has now driven it back up again, which is a good thing, but it is going to continue to mean that pensions take a bigger and bigger share of the benefits bill in a way that isn't sustainable. And there are better ways of targeting pensioner poverty. So I just think when you've got a forecast a year ago that an extra 400,000 children would be in poverty at the end of this Parliament, that's under a Labour government, you cannot justify spending an increasing amount, sometimes on very wealthy pensioners, when you've got growing numbers of children growing up in child poverty. It is an either-or, and it is an either-or. I agree with David. I think the Labour government are unlikely to tackle it now, but they should be on a moral level.
So it's an either-or. You can't do everything.
This guy said to me in the constituency, he says, Duck, what are you going to do? There's only so much money. How are you going to spend it? And I said, we're going to spend it in line with Labour values and getting kids out of poverty. My God, that's a Labour value.
But maybe Labour should go back to focusing on growth, because, as I remember, Keir Starmer was voted in for change, and all he talked about, him and Rachel Reeves, was growth, growth, growth.
I
haven't heard Keir Starmer talk about growth. All you've done is U-turn on nearly every single thing you've tried to bring through the Parliament. You've got a weak Prime Minister who's lost control of his party. We don't hear the word growth anymore. Your first budget, straight away, under
Just
Rachel
back to the
Reeves,
triple lock.
absolutely went against growth.
Emily, what's your view on the triple lock?
My view on the triple lock is...
We've got the fastest growing economy in the
It's not going to happen, as everyone says, in this Parliament. And it can't be seen. We can't keep discussing these individual policies on their own unless the Labour Party comes up with a comprehensive set of policies, a comprehensive set of domestic policies which tackles all these issues. And we're not seeing that. We're just seeing a sort of chaos, really, and a Chancellor in tears last week, and a lost focus on growth and productivity. And we're going to start talking about the doctors' strike in a minute. Well, that's all connected to some disastrous early decisions that Labour took.
Just looking at the affordability of things, Richard Hughes, who's the chair of the Office for Budget Responsibility, said the UK cannot afford the range of policy promises that it has made to the public. David, it does strike me that now you're out of politics, it's much easier to say these things than when you were inside politics. Do you think it's almost impossible for ministers to effectively take money away from people?
It is really difficult, there's no denying it. And yes, Vicky, you're absolutely right. It's much easier for me to say today that the public are inclined to believe fairy stories told to them that, yes, they can have ever-increasing pensions and a bigger welfare state and improve public services, and taxes will be paid by somebody else. But that, unfortunately, does appear to be where a lot of the public is, and it is a challenge for politicians. But I'm afraid politicians do have to face up to this to explain some of the realities here. That the country is spending more than it can afford. It isn't, in truth, raising enough tax that it needs. And something is going to have to be done about that. And if we don't face up to it sooner rather than later, then we're going to hit some crisis and we're going to be forced to take even more unpleasant decisions. And that, I'm afraid, is the reality that we're in. And it's right that the OBR points this out. It's right that the IFS makes the case for reform in these areas. I do have sympathy with politicians who have the role of being re-elected. But unless we face up to some of these big challenges, then the country is going to face very, very significant problems.
Natalie, it's fairy stories.
I have to challenge anybody that says that we don't care about growth. That is our absolute strategy that we have spent the last year doing. We have got investment from business. We are one of the highest growing economies.
But it's not actually happening at the moment, is it? And what David's saying is that while we're waiting for growth to happen, this money is being spent and you are not being honest with people about the trade-offs.
We've never been anything other than honest about there being one public pot of money that we can spend, and we are spending it in the right ways. Getting NHS waiting lists down, getting kids breakfast clubs so that they've got childcare before school and they can go with full tummies. We are spending the money that we've got. We're prioritising the right things. We've seen investment in businesses. We've seen that we have.
Would agree with the national insurance hikes.
We are seeing growth in a way that people are going to feel. This is a real thing. We can talk about the IFS and the OBR and all of the things that people on the street don't don't really care about. What they care about is when they go to the supermarket, can they afford... I had a 15-minute conversation about tomato sauce on the doorstep because a single mum was telling me that had become a luxury. That is because of 14 years of mismanagement of public finances, not tackling the issues that absolutely needed to be solved. We've come in, we're fixing the foundations so that we can govern in the interests of working people, and we can have a country that we are all really proud of.
I think when you take a step back from this, though, I mean, obviously there are people who want to make it party political, but I think it's political in general, which is that I think we've got politicians on both sides of the spectrum who have not been honest with the public about some very difficult trade-offs, which is that we've got an ageing society. The long-term fiscal implications of that are awesome. They make what Rachel Reeves is dealing with child play. And if we project forwards, we're going to have a society where people in their 20s are paying much more tax than people in their 20s are today, just to stand still. No politician is being really honest about that. Conservatives weren't honest about that. Labour weren't honest about that. You can see why. It's a difficult message to sell. But what that means is I do think the public are more intelligent than politicians give them credit for. And, you know, they find it a turn-off when they know people aren't being properly honest with them and just offering easy fixes.
David, do you think that the growth can sort this out? And is there any chance that that is going to happen? I mean, there's all sorts of warnings about the UK being in a relatively vulnerable position compared to other advanced economies in terms of our growing debt.
Look, growth is important, and if you can increase the growth rate, then that does address many of the problems. And of course, governments should do what they can to encourage growth, to attract investment, to reduce trade barriers, to free up planning rules and so on. There's plenty that government can do here. But we also shouldn't get ourselves into the position, which I think Labour was at the course of the last general election campaign, is that if you just say something about growth and hope it turns up, all the problems go away. You both need to face up to the challenges in the public finances about us spending too much and taxing too little, that there's a mismatch there, and also come forward with policies that will help bring economic growth. All of that is necessary. We can't shy away from one or the other.
And Natalie, one of the other warnings and one of the things that's been pointed out, that part of the problem here and this gap, which is going to be a black hole, is because your party has gone back on some of the cuts that it was going to introduce in terms of welfare.
I think we've got to the right place in welfare. So we had 14 years where the welfare bill got completely out of control. I have constituents that...
But you're not capable of cutting it, it turns out.
We can't rush it, but it has to happen. We've got to make sure that the most disabled people in society are protected. That's a non-negotiable Labour value.
You're a year in, and you've just backed away from every single reform you've tried to put through.
The Conservatives have 14 years.
Can I just ask, how long?
Don't talk over each other.
How long is Labour? I'm just interested. How many more years into this Parliament are Labour going to keep saying that 14-year thing? Because it's already proven through polling this is not working with the public. They're not seeing Labour achieve anything. They're not seeing Labour getting a grip. That is why reform is rising in the polls. They want to see a party getting a grip with a full, attack on domestic policy. They're just seeing chaos again. You can't keep going 14 years. I mean, genuinely, ask the question, how much longer are you going to be briefed to come on this show or any BBC show and keep saying 14 years?
This isn't about a briefing that I've received. This is about my lived experience as a benefit advisor that was made redundant under the Conservative government because they didn't want people to claim benefits. They didn't want people like me to help them go all the way to tribunal. Disabled people have had a really callous and unfair system for too long where they were repeatedly assessed and then not assessed. This bill that's coming before us, we're saying that if this is going to affect you for the rest of your life, you aren't going to constantly be reassessed. We're making sure that you've got more incentives to work. And when we are looking at making changes to PIP, we're now saying we're going to give it a pause up to autumn 26. And we are going to work with disabled people. We are going to listen to you and we are going to make sure that we get this right. I will not take lectures from a government that didn't tackle this problem at all.
Conservatives brought PIP in and you just tried to chop its legs off. You can't blame the Conservatives. We brought
So you
in.
left an unsustainable budget. You're saying around the triple lock. You're saying
can't cut
around
it.
welfare. You're saying
can't
around.
cut
There are
it.
so many issues. This isn't a soundbite. This is a broken
It is a
country,
soundbite.
and this is why the government was voted out. The Conservatives are no longer in power, and people accept it. We've made strides in our first year, but it's only been a year. The damage that we did was so deep.
When are you going to stop all of you Labour MPs
Autumn
coming onto
26
shows?
is when PIP is going to be
and stop
the Timms
saying
review will
14
conclude.
years of Conservatives.
It's
Okay, hold on. Natalie, could I just ask you,
Yes.
do you think that ultimately the welfare bill needs to be cut?
I think that we need to make sure that my constituents need faith in it. And Liz Kendall came to knock on doors in my constituency. She got to the third door. They didn't know who she was. And they said, Doug, problem is with you lot is you give too much money to people on benefits. We need to know that people see that they're protected when they need it. That's what the welfare state is for. And then those two parents that are working and worried about September's school uniform, they need to know that the most vulnerable are protected. But nobody else gets it that shouldn't.
The problem there is, because I think there's a lot of consensus around the idea that the long-term benefits bill needs to come down. The problem is that the only way to do that in the long term is to move more people into work who can work. Yeah. And I think the issue is that in a system, the system needs upfront investment in the first place to do that. It can't just be about slashing benefits, including for people who might find it very difficult to work, who are genuinely disabled. That's really difficult because where is that upfront investment going to come from? So it's not an easy problem for the government to solve. It's quite a confounding one, but that is the issue.
And let's just go back to David finally, and just to bring it back to the triple lock. David, I want you to predict the future. And do you think that any party will go into the next election saying that they won't stick to the triple lock?
I'm worried that, particularly in a world of multi-parties, which is what we're now in, that it's not going to happen. But I fear the consequence of political parties failing to face up to these challenges, and the triple lock is just one of them, but it's an important one. I fear the consequences that at some point or other we are going to be in a crisis, that the public finances will be in the crisis, that our debt interest bills will go up. And this may all sound a bit sort of academic and technical and so on, but that will have a real impact on the British people. That will mean really big costs and very tough decisions having to be made. So better to face up to the crisis before we get there than allow a crisis to occur.
OK, David Gauke, thank you very much for speaking to us and being with us today. Talking about raising revenue, here is a type of tax that was discussed and approved by the Welsh Senedd yesterday. This BBC News headline, Wales's tourism tax plans given the go-ahead. And we can talk now to the Welsh Finance Secretary, Mark Drakeford. Can you explain to us how this is going to work?
Well, thank you. Good morning. This is a permissive power for our local authorities to decide whether or not they want to introduce a visitor levy in their areas. So that's the first thing to say. It's a power to do something for areas that want it. It's not something that will be happening across the whole of Wales. But where there are very large numbers of visitors, we think it is fair that those visitors make a small contribution to keeping those areas attractive into the future. And a visitor levy would add a small amount to the bill of visitors staying in those localities, and that money then has to be reinvested in making a success of the tourism industry.
And what kind of amount are we talking about that people would have to pay, or is it up to the local area?
No, the bill that was approved yesterday sets two rates. A lower rate for for accommodation where people share facilities, campsites, hostels, that sort of thing. That's 75 pence a night. And in all other forms of accommodation, it's £1.30 per night.
Are you worried at all that it might put people off coming to stay in Wales?
No, I don't think that is a realistic fear. Levies of this sort are absolutely common now around the world, from Iceland to New Zealand and many countries in between. And the evidence is very clear. This does not deter tourists. In fact, many people in the surveys we've done recognised that when you arrive in an area, you inevitably create costs in those areas, and it's right to make a small contribution to covering those costs. People who come to Wales, they want their beaches to be clean, they want their footpaths to be safe, they want to have public toilets available. on beaches and so on. And this is just a small contribution to making sure that when you come to visit Wales, and we're very keen you do, it's absolutely fantastic here today, that you know that the places you visit will be in the sort of condition that attracted you to them in the first place.
I mean, some parts of Europe, we've seen an anti-tourism vibe, really, haven't we? Where it's become, seen as very much a negative thing. A lot of tourists coming to Wales will think, well, I'm already contributing to the local economy just by being here and spending money. Are you concerned at all that there might be this negativity towards tourism?
Well, I certainly hope not, because that's not the message that we have here in Wales. Wales is very proud to welcome people to come and stay in the beautiful places we have on our coast, just as we were pleased to welcome people from right around the world to Cardiff last week for the Oasis concert. This is not a message about not coming to Wales. It's a message about fairness. It's a message about having a sustainable tourism industry for the future. And it's a message about putting Wales in the mainstream of the way that the rest of the world responds to tourism.
Have you any idea how many will decide to impose this levy?
I think it'll be a relatively small number of local authorities in the first flush, because inevitably some councils will want to see how others take on this responsibility. But I think we will see it here in the capital city. I think there will be places on the coast of Wales where there are significant numbers of visitors who will want to be in the first batch of councils. And then I think over time we'll see others join as well.
Do you think it's going to be a vote winner?
I think it's a very modest measure. I doubt that many people will have this on the top of their minds when they come to casting their votes. We do know that in places where there are major numbers of visitors, the idea is popular amongst residents, because at the moment those residents with their council tax pick up all the costs involved in visitors coming to their locality. So amongst people who live in those parts of Wales right around the year, the measure is a popular one. There'll be many other things people have in their minds when they come to the ballot box.
I mean, I ask about the popularity of this because when you were leader of Labour in Wales, you were riding high in the polls. Since you've gone, you're now third behind Reform and Plaid Cymru. Do you think it's time they had you back?
Well, that's very kind of you to suggest it, but my plans for the future are a bit otherwise. It really is time. I've been very lucky. I've been part of devolution for 25 years.
But are you worried? Are you worried about Labour's position? Are you worried about Labour's position? There are very important Senedd elections next year.
There are, and the Labour Party, as ever, will do all the things that we do. We will be out there talking to people, persuading them, demonstrating why a vote for the Labour Party remains the best way to secure a progressive future for our nation. That is more challenging in an era of multi-party politics, but you can be sure we will be doing everything we can to go on conveying that message and cementing and re-cementing the relationship that's been there between Welsh people and the Labour Party for over a century.
Do you think that the Labour government, the UK government in Westminster, is that helping your message or is it a bit of a hindrance?
Well, from my point of view, I wanted that Labour government for 14 years, and I'm really glad that we have the chance to work alongside a Labour government in Westminster as well. People in Wales will look to that government to demonstrate that it has Wales's interests in the decisions that it makes, that it is, as Labour always has been, the party of devolution, prepared to put more decisions into the hands of people who live here in Wales, and then that the fruits of that partnership will become evident to people, and we need to make them evident in advance of that next Senedd elections.
And are you doing enough to do that, to make it evident?
Well,
there's a lot of unhappiness about the Labour government, isn't there, in Westminster?
Well, I caught the end of your last conversation, and the incoming Labour government has had very tough things it's needed to do in that first year. We need to demonstrate that we are a Labour Party with authentic Labour values, that we know whose side we are on when it comes to the decisions we have to make. And I think that will communicate itself very powerfully here in Wales.
OK, Mark Drakeford, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Let's go back to that idea of a tourism tax, if you like. There are a couple of cities, I think, in England who have introduced it. Do you think it's a good idea?
I love going to Wales, and if they want to do it, then, you know, I absolutely understand why. I'm glad that we're not doing it because we're working really hard with the local authority to get more people to come to Bolsover. Cheeky pitch. It's in the middle of Derbyshire. We've got Bolsover Castle, Hardwick Hall, Cresswell Crags. If anybody fancies not going to Wales this year and coming to Bolsover instead...
Oh dear, we're going to make rival bids now.
Yeah. Politicians stealing tourism off each other. It's getting spicy.
Sarah, do you think it's a good idea, a tourism levy?
I don't think it's a good idea at the moment. Mark was saying that they have in mind the people they need to say, well, they're not representing businesses. The hospitality industry has been massively hit this last year, and this is just another thing. It's going to make it that bit harder, and I don't think any of those will appreciate it. We do need to be encouraging tourism. We had 500,000 people coming to Silverstone for the Grand Prix this weekend. You know, we've got to drive and give them opportunities, and this is just another typical Labour tax, which is just not necessary.
Sonia?
I think it's quite a good idea, actually. I'm really used to paying tourism taxes. You know, for example, when you go to Italy, you sort of don't even think anything of it. You get a sort of euro or two added on per night. I agree with Mark Drakeford. I think it's so marginal. It's unlikely to put people off when you're talking about, you know, a £60 a night upwards hotel bill. It's quite a marginal amount on that. And I think it's important that it's left to local areas to decide, because some might say, well, actually, tourism, you know, that marginal amount might affect us a little bit, so we're not going to impose it. But I think if you've got high tourism volume areas, it's unlikely to put people off visiting. It does generate a bit of extra income, no-brainer.
Really?
I'm quite with Sonia, actually. I think I just want to bring... I think it should... Liverpool and Manchester are already doing this. They're just doing a sort of workaround from the law. Leave it up to local areas to decide. And areas like Bolsover may think they don't want to do it. They want to... But I think an important point worth thinking about is are places like Airbnb going to be charged?
See, not under these proposals. So it's hotels.
I'm sorry, I think that's bad.
I agree.
In hospitality, why should they take the crunch? Lots of hotels are being undercut by Airbnb, these big tech firms. And we could list, sorry, I don't mean to just pick on Airbnb, there are lots of them, but these big foreign tech firms, I'm sorry, they should not be allowed to get away from British taxes.
Do you think that's
Yeah,
fair
absolutely.
enough?
I can't understand why you wouldn't apply it to short-term holiday lets in the same way that you would hotels.
I guess it's voluntary, so I suppose if they don't want to do it, then they don't have to do it. But we'll see if it comes to a place near you. Let's have a look at the House of Commons, because Prime Minister's Questions is coming up in the next 10 minutes or so. You can see that it is filling up in there. We expect the Prime Minister to turn up at some point quite soon, and Kemi Badenoch with plenty to go at him on, I would imagine. I'm sure she's got her plan already. In the meantime, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has been in town. He's here, of course, as part of a state visit. He's in Windsor. He's been in Windsor this morning with the King. You can see the pictures here of them having a little tour by the looks of it. He's been here already for a day. There was a state banquet last night at Windsor Castle, and the politics will come into play later on today, because Emmanuel Macron will be heading to Downing Street for a lunch where, of course, one of the topics will be about immigration, and it will be about small boats and the cooperation or not on how to stop that happening, how to reduce the numbers. Natalie, do you think that Keir Starmer's going to get a deal on this possibility of one in, one out?
I don't know what's going to happen later today, but I am thrilled to see what's happening with President Macron. We've been talking along the show about how there are things in this first year haven't been ideal for the Labour government. The thing that has really stood out for me, that I have been so incredibly proud of, is how we have shown ourselves as a leader on the world stage. So we are an independent country, which constituencies like mine wanted, that are now got a really strong relationship with Europe, with America. We're seeing the benefits. So in terms of small boats, we've now got a relationship where we're talking about what's going to happen. We're looking in shallow water at French authorities stopping the boats launching. This is incredible.
Do you think that's going to carry on, though? Because they said that was a bit of a one-off, actually, because that boat was overcrowded. Do you think there will be confirmation of a change in police tactics?
Small boats down and immigration down, never by gimmicks like Rwanda that cost so much money and achieve nothing. Instead, we're going to get it by working so incredibly closely with partners like France. This is the first time we've had a relationship like it, and already we've seen they've prevented 12,000 crossings already this year.
20,000 already this year. So
again,
increasing.
14 years and didn't do anything about it. But it's now somebody else's turn, and we are actually delivering on immigration. We're making sure that returns are up, and we are processing claims. Hotel use is down. We are absolutely making sure that we're tackling this issue that constituents like mine really care about.
Sarah, is she right that actually this is only going to work? You're only going to get these numbers down by working with France?
You need to work with France, but you actually need an effective deterrent. And whether you like Rwanda or not, what we can see is with the removal of that,
volunteers
it hadn't properly started. And the reality is that
it's only ever going to apply to a tiny proportion of arrivals.
They used to laugh about it.
I actually think that the one in, one out idea, I mean, the difficulty about this is it's very hard to put people off wanting to come to the UK who are seeking asylum, and that is true whichever government you are.
The French have talked about the pull factors, haven't they?
But the one in, one out idea, where basically you agree with France that you return everybody who arrives on small boats, and in exchange we increase our asylum numbers for people who've got links with family members who are already in the UK. I think that's a very interesting idea, because I think I would be curious to know if, knowing that there is a return scheme where 100% of people get returned, that does act as a more effective deterrent than something like the Rwanda scheme, which was incredibly expensive, ever could.
Natalie, do you think your constituents in Bolsover would be happy with that idea? One in, one out?
Yeah, what used to happen before is that you used to say, don't we know this isn't going to work? You know, why would anybody care about going to Rwanda or not? If it's got to be a proper deterrent, whatever agreement is reached, people have to see that there's no point trying to come, because even if you get here, you're not going to get here in the first place, and if you get here in the first place, you're going to be quickly out the door.
They are staying
at the moment, we've got the Tory legacy that means that immigration... The reason that Reform are doing so well is because people are angry that nothing has happened for such a long time about immigration. I am thrilled to see a year to turn around your legacy is very difficult. It's impossible.
There's also a really difficult question, which is around IT and how you track people. Because, I mean, it's absolutely right, in my view, we have an asylum system that is fair. People who've got a right to asylum are allowed to stay. The issue comes when you've got people whose claims are rejected, and they are a minority, but actually it's very difficult to keep track of those people, and it's very easy to just sort of go into the black economy to work without having papers, etc.
And that is part of the pull factors that the French have talked about.
And that's a bigger political question, which is, do we as a country want to move, for example, to ID cards, something the Conservatives didn't do? There are civil liberties questions. There are trade-offs.
Emily?
I think I'd be very surprised if the people in Bolsover are happy with one in, one out. What people really want to see is bringing down immigration numbers. And just to go back to your 14 years of, you know, the Tories didn't get a grip. Actually, it was the Tories who ended the last big wave of immigration, which came through the Channel, under trains, in trucks. This is a much harder problem. And I'm afraid I have my doubts that Macron is serious about stopping those boats, because really the French are much happier if those migrants come here. They don't want them on his shores. Macron is not in a safe position at the moment. And I just don't have much belief on it.
Do you think there's too much focus on the small boats in some ways? Because the numbers are relatively small compared to the numbers coming in.
I'm sorry, but it's the fairness. And I think what they want to see every party get to, and there's just a lot of shouting. Reform are going to shout the loudest about that and come up with ridiculous statements like, oh, we're just going to put them on boats and send them back to France. I mean, it's just completely nonsensical, won't work. It's the fairness. It's that we're stopping migrants we want to have, people here, like from Afghanistan, because 50,000 have come in illegally. And those boats, of course, there's the odd woman and child on there, but anyone looking at those pictures of those boats, we are seeing young, healthy men who had the money to pay those smugglers. And at the same time, there is human trafficking going on those boats. So I love that Macron's come here, him and Keir Starmer cozying up to each other. I think it's absolutely right that Keir Starmer continues to work with France, but we are going to have to work harder on that pull factor and come up with a a series of deterrents, and Labour have not come up with those yet. I'm not saying, I think the reason they were able to knife that boat, by the way, was down to Yvette Cooper getting the French to change their law where they could tackle those boats. And I think it is those images where the French police are standing on the beach and boats are going off in front of them that will really anger, you know, your constituents, all constituents actually in this country. So I think, again, it's never going to be one thing. It was never going to be just Rwanda, and the Tories never claimed that. We need a whole sort of raft of things that really get to grip with this. And I don't know.
But I do think it's important to distinguish between immigration and legal routes and the asylum system and people who arrive here to try and claim asylum. And I agree with Emily, the way that the international system around refugees works, you know, it dates to the 1950s. There are very important ethical principles behind it. But one of the issues is that actually if you can get to a country physically, then you have the right to put in an application for asylum. And there are a lot of poorer residents of countries like Syria and Afghanistan, women and children, as you say, who can't make that journey. But then the answer to that has to be, well, how do we have safe and legal routes for people who are most in need? But also, how do we tackle things like the black economy, for example, and the fact that we don't have ID cards? You know, the UK is a very attractive place to come, and people will always want to try and come and claim asylum here. They just will.
We're about to go to Prime Minister's questions, and the chamber there. The Prime Minister is there. Sitting next to him is Rachel Reeves. And Sonia, this time last week, of course, we sat here with quite distressing scenes of watching the Chancellor very upset.
Absolutely. I mean, I think on a human level, it was just really horrible to watch.
Sorry, Prime Minister's questions just starting now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, we marked the 20th anniversary of the despicable terrorist attacks on 7/7. The painful memories of that dark day are deeply ingrained. 52 people were murdered. Many more were injured. We thank our emergency services who ran towards danger with true bravery and send our deepest condolences to the victims, the survivors and bereaved, and all those forever affected by that appalling day. May I also extend our deepest condolences to the family and friends of Lord Tebbit. We remember his profound courage in the face of terrorism and a fierce devotion to his wife, Margaret. May he rest in peace. Mr. Speaker, we also mark the 30th anniversary of the genocide at Srebrenica. We remember those lost and redouble our efforts to fight hatred and intolerance wherever it exists. Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to welcome President Macron to the United Kingdom. Our relationship has never been stronger, and we're focused on tough new tactics to tackle illegal migration, major economic investment to create jobs, and leading our allies to support Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks? At a recent coffee morning, residents in Southampton-Itchen told me how much they still miss the Bitton NHS walk-in centre that was shut down a decade ago under the Conservatives. So can I begin by welcoming this government's 10-year plan and its commitment to neighbourhood health services. And as we put this plan for change into action for my local residents, does the Prime Minister agree that Bitton is an excellent location for the first new neighbourhood health centre?
Well, I pay tribute to him for making the case for his constituents, and I know the Health Secretary will give it every consideration. Mr. Speaker, the 10-year plan will establish neighbourhood health centres in every community, and that'll make a massive difference, starting in the places where the need is greatest and life expectancy at its lowest. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud that we promised 2 million extra NHS appointments in the first year of a Labour government, and we've now delivered £4 million. We shouldn't forget that the record investment that made that possible in the budget was opposed by all the parties opposite.
Leader of the opposition, come in bed or not? Mr. Speaker, can I echo the Prime Minister's sentiments about the horrific terrorist attack of July the 7th? I was pleased to be at the commemoration service on Monday, and in particular, our thoughts are with the families of those who lost their lives, those who had to go on without their loved ones. And, Mr. Speaker, I would like to pay tribute to Lord Tebbit, who died yesterday at the age of 94. He was a man of iron integrity and conviction, who by his efforts helped to save our country from the chaos of the 1970s. We all owe him so much. Mr. Speaker, in their manifesto last year, Labour promised not to increase income tax, not to increase national insurance, and not to increase VAT. Does the Prime Minister still stand by his promises?
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, it is rare. It is rare, yes. It is rare that he's able to give a clear answer, but I'm glad that he has done so, because he also promised, in fact, he boasted that he solved the doctor strike. But only a Prime Minister who was so weak and giving 28% pay rise to doctors, only now we see that they're still voting to strike again. He folds in every negotiation and claims that it is a triumph. Yes, he does. And we saw at the budget, Mr. Speaker, more promises. The Chancellor promised that she would lift the freeze on income tax and national insurance thresholds, because in her words, they hurt working people. Is that still government policy?
Mr. Speaker, no Prime Minister or Chancellor is going to write a budget in advance. We are absolutely fixed on our fiscal rules. We remain committed to them. We remain committed to our budget, to our manifesto commitments. I realise that sticking to your fiscal rules and your manifesto commitments is a bit unfamiliar to the party opposite, but it's because of the decisions the Chancellor took, that this government has taken, that we can update the House. £120 billion of inward investment into this country since we took office. Business confidence at a 9-year high. That's longer than the Leader Opposition has been in Parliament. Deloitte this week saying the UK is now the best place to invest, creating 384,000 jobs. What a contrast to the mess that we inherited from the party opposite.
Mr. Speaker, there was no clear answer there. The whole House would have heard him fail to rule out freezing tax thresholds. He could say it in the first question, he could promise, but he couldn't this time round. But what does this mean, Mr. Speaker? He's talking about record investment and more jobs. We know that people are losing their jobs. Unemployment has gone up under Labour every single month since it's their year in office. But what does it mean on this issue of tax thresholds? It means that under Labour, millions of our poorest pensioners face being dragged into income tax for the first time ever. Does the Prime Minister think it is right that struggling pensioners should face a retirement tax?
Mr. Speaker, for a Prime Minister or Chancellor to say we're not going to write a budget in advance isn't a Labour thing or a Tory thing. Every single Prime Minister and Chancellor says they won't. We will stick to our manifesto commitments. We will stick to our fiscal rules. This is a language they don't understand, which is why I have to... That's what got us into the problem in the first place. And whilst she comes here every week to talk the country down, that investment, record investment, £120 billion, that will be good, well-paid jobs across the country. And this investment, Mr. Speaker, is foreign investors who can choose whether to invest in this country. They're choosing to invest in this country now because they have confidence in what this government is doing.
Mr. Speaker, investors are fleeing the country. They're fleeing the country. He says he sticks to his manifesto promises. They promised not to put a tax on working people, and then we got the jobs tax. And all we have seen is jobs disappearing. Before the election, the Prime Minister promised, and I quote, "not a penny more on your council tax." The Institute for Fiscal Studies says that now council tax bills will rise at their fastest rate in 20 years. Will the Prime Minister admit that under him council tax is set to soar?
No, of course it's not. It soared under the last government. But, Mr. Speaker, here she goes again, back on familiar territory. She comes here complaining about the national insurance rise every year, every week. She comes here complaining about it. And then when she's asked the question, well, would you have the courage then to reverse it? What's the answer? What's the answer? No!
because she's too embarrassed to say she doesn't want the investment we put in. That investment went to the NHS. They want the investment, they can't say how they're going to pay for it. That is what got us into the problem in the first place.
Mr. Speaker, he still doesn't understand, so I'm going to make it very simple for him. This is a mess of his own making. He shouldn't be asking how we would clean it up. The fact is, they raise national insurance through the jobs tax, and that's why they have to put up council tax. The truth is, his catastrophic budget has created a domino effect which he cannot now control. We on this side of the House know that you cannot tax your way to growth. But now he's flirting. They're all muttering. I remember that budget. They were laughing and cheering. They had no idea the mess that they were creating. They should go and explain to their constituents about why unemployment is going up. But, Mr. Speaker, what is more worrying is that now he's flirting with Neil Kinnock's demand for a wealth tax. Let's be honest about what that means. This is a tax on all of our constituent savings, on their houses, on their pensions. It would be a tax on aspiration. Will the Prime Minister rule this out?
Mr. Speaker says we shouldn't be asking them for advice on the economy. She's absolutely right about that. We will not be asking for their advice. What we did in the budget was stabilise the economy through the measures taken by the Chancellor. And what has that led to? 4 interest rate cuts. For mortgage holders, that's hugely important. Compare and contrast what happened on the Liz Truss mini-budget. The fastest growth in the G7 in the first quarter of this year. Wages up more in the first 10 months of a Labour government than the 10 years under the Tories. So, no, we don't need lessons from them.
Mr. Speaker, he says he stabilised the economy. Has he spoken to any farmers recently? Yes. It is time for him to take responsibility for the mess he is making. He has been in office for a year, and all we see is him congratulating himself on what a fantastic job that he has done. Nobody out there believes it. No, not even them. Not even them. What a weak chair. Mr. Speaker, he's congratulating himself. We can compare records. He talks about the fastest-growing economy. We left him the fastest-growing economy of the G7. We cut the deficit in every year until the pandemic. We got inflation down to 2%. On his watch, taxes are up. Unemployment is up. Inflation is up. And this weak Prime Minister has been forced into a series of chaotic U-turns. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, the OBR said that our economy is being eroded under Labour. Doctor strikes, tax bombshells, the wealthy leaving in droves. Isn't the truth that under him he is dragging us back to the 1970s?
Mr. Speaker, responsibility. We're responsible for 4 million extra appointments in the NHS. We're responsible for a 10-year plan on the future of the NHS after they broke it. We're also responsible for free school meals being rolled out in a way which has never been done by any government. Breakfast clubs being rolled out, family hubs being rolled out, transport across the country, and migration coming down. We take responsibility and we're proud of that.
Lord Hatton. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Eden project in Cornwall is a proven success story, injecting millions into the local economy. And in Lancashire, Eden Morecambe will soon be under construction, set to create hundreds of jobs. So it's about time we had the third instalment with Memo Portland, or Eden Portland, as many like to call it. This will be a world-class attraction, celebrating the Jurassic Coast and transforming the economy in South Dorset. So will the Prime Minister back this exciting project and work with me and all of the relevant ministers to secure funding to deliver this project? And ideally, can we use the new Growth Mission Fund?
Well, look, I thank him for highlighting this exciting proposal, and he's a fantastic advocate for Portland and South Dorset. The Eden Portland is a hugely exciting project. I can't confirm funding allocations yet, Mr. Speaker, but our £240 million Growth Mission Fund should support transformative projects that give local leaders real investment to deliver real change. And I know he makes a compelling case in relation to the fund that's been set out.
Sir Ed David, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself and my party with the Prime Minister's comments about the horrifying terrorist bombings of 7/7 here in London. Our thoughts are with the victims, their families and our amazing emergency services. And can I also join in the condolences to the family of Lord Tebbit? He was a man of service in the RAF, in politics, and as a carer for his wife, Margaret. He will be greatly missed. Mr. Speaker, after years of Conservative neglect, the special education needs system is in desperate need of repairs. But with parents understandably worried, we already hear Labour MPs planning another rebellion. So can I offer the Prime Minister this? If he genuinely wants to fix the problem and not strip away the rights of children and parents in some cost-cutting exercise, then we have 72 votes to help. So, will the Prime Minister look at the 5 tests for SEND reform we have published today and work with us to make it happen?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's telling that when he raises the question of the broken SEND system, they laugh at the back of the Tory boxes. They laugh. That's how seriously they take their responsibility. Absolute shame. But as he knows, every week across the House, people raise this issue with me. I think it's been raised more times than anything else. And everyone knows the system is broken. And again, guess who broke it along with everything else? It doesn't work for parents, and it lets down children. So we do need to reform and change it. That's not about saving money. We've already invested an additional £1 billion into SEND, but it is about creating a new system that truly supports every child. And we're developing proposals. We want to work with parents and teachers to get this right, and I would expect him to welcome that.
Sir Ed Davey. Well, I thank the Prime Minister for his reply. We want to work across the House to fix the mess that lay live. We don't want another welfare-style mess this time. We've got to fix this properly for parents and children. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative government badly undermined the security of our borders by ripping up the returns agreement that allowed us to send migrants back to Europe. So I hope the Prime Minister can secure a new returns agreement with France that acts as a real deterrent to stop the votes. And the Conservatives also sent hundreds of millions of pounds to France and got nothing in return. Does the Prime Minister agree that any new funding to the French government must be conditional on them agreeing a returns deal and doing their bit to stop the boats?
Mr. Speaker, we're working closely with the French on this issue. We'll only provide funding that delivers for our priorities. We are working closely. We share information to a much greater extent than was the case before. We've got a new specialist intelligence unit at Dunkirk, and we're the first government to persuade the French to review their laws and tactics on the North Coast to take more effective action. I'll be discussing this at meetings with President Macron both today and tomorrow.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In light of recent events, could the Prime Minister update the House on the work of the COVID Corruption Commissioner? And does he agree with my constituents in Rugby, Bulkington and the surrounding villages that there should be no place in public life for people who exploited the pandemic and defrauded the taxpayer to line their own pockets?
My honourable friend makes a powerful point, and I hope it was heard on the benches opposite. It's an absolute scandal that failed PPE contracts were handed out by the Conservatives at taxpayer funds of £1.4 billion. We're focused on getting our money back. I can confirm the Commissioner is now investigating fraud involving bounce back and business support loans, and we will continue to go after the fraudsters, the grifters and the con artists, no matter who they are or where we find them.
Nigel Farage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The main reason there's a grifter in this country decided
Some of you want to get in a little later. If this takes forever, you won't get in. Nigel Farage.
Thank you. The main reason this country wisely voted for Brexit back in 2016, and that included millions of Labour supporters, is because we wanted to take back control of our borders so that we and we alone could decide who comes and settles in our country. Does the Prime Minister understand that demand today is even greater than it was back in 2016, and that we demand, the country demands, that you say to the French President, will you shut up? You say to the French President, we will not accept undocumented males across the English Channel, and that you are not dictated to by an increasingly arrogant, anti-Brexit French President.
Mr. Speaker, we are fixing the mess that we inherited. We are working with other countries to ensure that we take the measures necessary to stop people crossing the Channel. They are serious answers to serious problems. His proposal for 10 years, wagging the Tory dog, has been to break everything and claim that's how you fix things, to stick two fingers up at your neighbours and then expect them to work with us. And he votes against the Borders Bill, which gives more powers to our law enforcement to deal with security at our borders. And, Mr. Speaker, the reason for that is he has no interest in fixing the problem because he wants to milk it and exploit it. That's the truth about him and his party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From homelessness to child poverty, so many of the challenges that I see people facing in Exeter can be traced back to early years. So can I welcome how this government is rebuilding on the legacy of Sure Start, so cruelly dismantled by the party opposite? And can the Prime Minister set out what difference this will make to family services in Exeter?
Well, I'm grateful to him. I've discussed it with him before. He's a brilliant champion for Exeter. Mr. Speaker, every child should have support to realise their potential. And the party opposite tore up Sure Start and took it out of our communities, an act, in my view, of vandalism that abandoned families and deepened inequalities. Mr. Speaker, we're delivering 1,000 Best Start family hubs across the country. That's in addition to free childcare being rolled out and expanding free school meals. That's the change the Labour government makes.
Jim Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Growing numbers of people are joining calls for a wealth tax on the super-rich, including former Labour leader Lord Kinnock and today a former First Minister of Wales, and it transpires the Chancellor herself when she was in opposition. So will the Prime Minister stand by his promise that those with the broadest shoulders should carry the largest burden? And can he clarify that that means the ultra-wealthy, not disabled people, the poorest, and children with special educational needs?
Mr. Speaker, I'm really not going to take advice from a party that put forward £80 billion of unfunded commitments at the last election. That's the sort of thing that got us into the problem in the first place. Mr. Speaker, we can't just tax our way to growth. We need to ensure that we put in place the necessary measures. We're putting in place planning reforms, Mr. Speaker, to drive growth. He voted against it and they voted against it.
Bill Estes.
Mr. Speaker, I am proud that this Labour government is banning fire and rehire. I am proud that we are addressing the abusive use of zero-hour contracts and improving protections at work, particularly against unfair dismissal. Reform and their Tory friends voted against Labour's workplace protections. I don't know why they're heckling. When they were in government, they promised to deal with fire and rehire, and after, and despite the scandal at P&O, did absolutely nothing about it. So, does my right honourable friend agree that it is only this Labour government which will ensure people have fairness at work in this country?
Well, I'm proud that we'll give 15 million workers, that's half of all workers, stronger rights at work. And, Mr. Speaker, that's sick pay for up to 1.3 million of the lowest paid, tackling sexual harassment and bereavement leave for families who experience pregnancy loss before 24 weeks. Compare that to the Leader of the Opposition who thinks maternity pay is excessive.
the leader of Reform, who wants working people to pay tax for tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires. Both of them vote against reform and better protection of workers at every term. They always have and they always will. They offer nothing for working people.
Sir David Davis.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, before my question, can I tell the House that in the public gallery today there are a number of veterans of Northern Ireland? Given what the Prime Minister said about 7/7, I'd like to publicly thank them for their courage in defending our country and our democracy against the first scourge of terrorism. Now, the Prime Minister knows that every time a paramilitary was killed in Northern Ireland by a British soldier, it triggered a thorough investigation. No bullet went unscrutinised. Our soldiers were held to the highest standards of law. The IRA were not. They tortured and shot men in the back. They forced families to watch their menfolk murdered. They killed women and children with bombs. Yet we're willing to prosecute our own men. Men forced to make life and death decisions in split seconds. If the government get the legacy legislation wrong, at least 50 innocent retired veterans will be exposed to legal persecution for crimes they did not commit. Now, I've raised this matter 6 times now since February. So I ask again, on Monday, when we debate this matter in Westminster Hall, will his government protect our veterans, or will it sacrifice them to politically motivated lawyers trying to rewrite history with a pack of lies?
Can I join in his thanks to the veterans here today with us and to all veterans? And I mean, he knows this is a serious issue, and the outing of his at the end of his question didn't really reflect that seriousness, because the scheme that was set up by the party opposite was found to be unlawful in the courts, and he knows it. And it wasn't supported by the communities. It would have meant, as he knows, immunity from prosecution for those who committed the most appalling terrorist crimes. And that's why it didn't have support in the communities and didn't have the support, I think, of any political party in Northern Ireland. And that was amongst the reason it was found to be unlawful. So we have to tread carefully. We have to get this right. And I'll work with him on that, but we don't get there by cheapening the debate. We will look at the address. It's not about political point scoring. I worked in Northern Ireland. I've spoken to many of the people affected, and I know we must get this right, and I want to do so, and I want the House to do it together if we possibly can, because it matters. But we have to do that in a serious way, to address the issues of the past, of course, in a way that has support of victims and survivors. And that is a key test for me, because without the support of victims and survivors, I think it's very hard in Northern Ireland to come up with something which will have the confidence of everybody in Northern Ireland, which is why we have to work in the way we do. In advance of the new legislation, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland continues to engage with veterans and their communities to ensure that legacy mechanisms are fair, that they're lawful and they're proportionate. And I'll continue to work with him and others in the House, because the most important thing is not scoring points but getting it right.
Luke Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I published a report which revealed the terrible legacy left by the party opposite on the NHS locally. Kids in Basingstoke waiting 210 days following a referral for access to mental health services, 3 times the national average. So I welcome the publication of the 10-year plan last week, led by the Prime Minister, to be delivered by a Labour Health Secretary, made possible by a Labour Chancellor. But can I ask the Prime Minister what more the government is able to do to close that gap in mental health services locally and ensure that every kid in Basingstoke has access to the very best mental health services?
Well, I thank him for that. The party opposite failed to give children the support that they need. The 10-year plan that we've put forward will rewire our NHS and transform mental health services. 85 dedicated mental health A&E departments giving 24/7 support, specialist mental health professionals in every school and college, benefiting 1 million young people this year alone, and an extra 8,500 mental health staff to tackle long waits. And that is only because of the decisions that we took to invest in our NHS, decisions that they oppose.
Jess Brown-Fuller.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to add to the many calls that this Prime Minister has already heard about the broken SEND system. I met with head teachers and SENCOs in my constituency of Chichester last week. They all told me the same thing, that the SEND system is broken, it's adversarial, parents are at breaking point, there are not enough spaces in specialist schools, and the EHCP process is long, it's harrowing, and it's often degrading. Now, I know the government are exploring their options, but will he take the Liberal Democrat calls to introduce a national body for SEND so that we can end the postcode lottery and fix this problem for good?
Well, I thank her for raising this issue, and I know it's of concern to her and to many people across the House. The system we've got is broken. It's not serving anyone well. We've got to reform it, and I set out in an earlier answer the steps that we are taking. We will share those with the House, and I hope that we can get the greatest support possible for the reform that I think everybody here knows has to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm delighted at the spending review commitment of £445 million for Welsh Rail. A new station at Meigren-Undy will take cars off the congested M4, offer greener journeys and open doors for local residents without a vehicle to get jobs. And it's great value for money due to the track and infrastructure that's already in place there. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that Meigren-Undy is an excellent candidate to be the first Burn station built so it can start serving local people?
Well, it's so good to see strong Labour MPs standing up for Wales and her constituency. She makes her case. I can't confirm the plans yet, but we will consider recommendations from the Burns Commission, which includes a proposal for a new station in her constituency. And I'm delighted, Mr. Speaker, just this week we set out a major road and rail schemes across the country, the A66, Newark Bypass, Midlands Rail Hub, creating tens of thousands of jobs, new homes and better journeys for millions of travellers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the past few weeks, I've spoken to 5 people from my rural constituency of North Devon who have been forced to remove their own teeth with pliers or with amateur surgical kits bought online because they are unable to find an NHS dentist. What would the Prime Minister say to those people, Mr. Speaker? And when will the government banish this dentistry crisis to the history books where it belongs?
Well, Mr. Speaker, another shameful legacy from the party opposite, with 1 in 4 adults struggling with NHS care and tooth decay as the most common reason for hospital admissions for children aged 5 to 9 under their watch. We are fixing this, Mr. Speaker, and I can set out what we're doing. We're rolling out 700,000 urgent and emergency appointments. We're reforming the dental contract and recruiting more dentists and newly qualified dentists to practice in the NHS for a minimum period. All of that only made possible because of the investment we put in the budget, which they all opposed.
Melanie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Tax evasion, money laundering, illicit goods, illegal working all undermine our high streets like Freeman Street in my own constituency, undermine local business confidence and challenge community cohesion. That's a reality around the country because of the explosion of vape shops, fake barbers, Harry Potter shops, American candy stores. Will the Prime Minister commit to working with his cabinet to bring in a national strategy to tackle the scourges of the high street and restore high street confidence?
Well, she's right to highlight this issue, Mr. Speaker. In March, we saw a major crackdown against criminals using high street businesses to launder money, and with almost 400 properties securing freezing orders over bank accounts totalling more than £1 million and arresting 35 individuals. There's much more to come, and I thank her for highlighting this really important issue.
Sir Ashley Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister was elected on a promise to smash the gangs. He said he would reduce small boat crossings. He said he would close asylum hotels. Why are all these issues going wrong?
Mr. Speaker, we are fixing the problem that they said they'd take control of borders and they lost it. We're working hard with our allies. We want to bring forward more powers for our law enforcement at the borders through our Borders Bill to give them the powers they need to take the job and deal with it. And what did they do? They voted against. A confected argument.
Patrick Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow evening sees the annual National Police Bravery Awards. 3 of the officers nominated this year are 3 of the officers who were first on the scene of the tragedy in my Southport constituency last summer. So will the Prime Minister join me in paying tribute to Sergeant Gregory Gillespie, Constable Luke Holden and PCSO Timothy Parry, who are with us in the gallery today, for their immense bravery in the face of evil? And just like our brave officers will always protect and defend us when we need them to, does he agree with me that this government will always support our brave officers in return?
Well, can I start by saying that the thoughts of the whole House, of course, are with the families of those that lost their little girls and all those affected by this terrible incident. I would like to put on record our heartfelt thanks to all of those who responded and those that are with us today: Sergeant Gregory Gillespie, PC Luke Holden, PCSO Timothy Parry. These officers ran towards danger to protect young lives, Mr. Speaker. I have met a number of them, and it is truly humbling to see the bravery and professionalism that they brought to their job that day and every day. Southport is a wonderful and loving community. In difficult days, they've shown kindness, empathy and courage. And I'd like to thank my honourable friend for all that he has done in relation to those values as well.
Ben Lake.
Mr. Speaker. My constituent, Mr. Brian Buckle, is a victim of a miscarriage of justice. He was wrongfully imprisoned for over 5 years before being exonerated at retrial. Now, Mr. Speaker, despite a jury unanimously finding him not guilty of the crimes for which he was imprisoned and the devastating impact this injustice continues to have on him and his family, his application for compensation was denied due to a 2014 change to the law that requires those who have been wrongfully imprisoned to prove their innocence beyond all reasonable doubt. This is an almost impossible hurdle to overcome. And so would the Prime Minister consider meeting with Mr Buckle to discuss his case and lend his support to Appeal's campaign for fair compensation for those who have been victims of a miscarriage of justice?
Well, can I thank you for raising this particular case, which saw a grave miscarriage of justice. In relation to the statutory test for compensation, this has been raised in the House before, and I've undertaken to have a look at it. And I know he's working, I think, with the Minister responsible on the particular case that he raises.
Well, let's...
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I thank the Prime Minister for leading from the front in promoting the importance of his role as a father and keeping time for family life. I'm delighted that this government in the past week has launched a review into parental leave, and we've started to rebuild the legacy of Sure Start by launching our Best Start family hubs, both things that will make a huge difference to my constituents in Ribble Valley. Can he commit to this parental leave review, creating some truly ambitious outcomes so that we can make the UK not only a world-leading place to live and do business, but also the best place in the world to live a rewarding family life?
Well, I think the first full review of parental leave and pay is a landmark moment. The current system is simply out of date and too complicated. 1 in 3 dads don't take paternity leave, often because they can't afford to do so. Mr Speaker, that's a great loss to them and their children. I want parents to be able to give their child the best care and make the system work better for employers.
We will leave Prime Minister's questions there, but we will bring you anything interesting that happens in the next few minutes as it comes to an end. Prime Minister's questions with the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, pushing the Prime Minister on his tax commitments, his commitment not to raise tax, asking him whether he would stick to that. And she got a very succinct answer, saying yes immediately. And now joining me for the rest of the programme, Labour Party Chair Ellie Reeves, Shadow Community Secretary Kevin Hollinrake and our Chief Political Correspondent Henry Zeffman. Now, we did see there sitting behind the Prime Minister, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves, and looking a lot happier than she did last week. Ellie, she is, of course, your sister, for those who don't know. Yes. She looked much happier this week.
Yes, she did, and that was good to see.
She's back on form, is she?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, last Thursday, she was out with the Prime Minister and the Health Secretary. She talked about about the personal issue. She's back on form. It's brilliant to see. Obviously, it was upsetting to see Rachel upset last week, but she's incredibly strong and resilient, and I've got every confidence in her.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, Henry, the actual substance of Prime Minister's questions, maybe not a huge surprise that Kemi Badenoch going on the economy and going on tax in particular.
Yeah, and I think we'll hear a lot more PMQs like that in the run-up to the autumn, because Rachel Reeves's second budget, this government's second budget, which will come probably in October or November, is shaping up to be, I think, a really pivotal moment for this government and actually for the country. What Kemi Badenoch asked in her first question was whether Keir Starmer was still committed to, I think, the core tax pledge of his general election manifesto, on which he won just over a year ago, which is not to increase the main rates of income tax, national insurance, some people would argue they've already broken that, but let's leave that aside for now, and VAT. Now, I think he slightly took the wind out of her sails, because he gave a very clear, literally as clear an answer as it's possible to give, one word.
Very unusual
yes.
for a politician.
Absolutely, and always a very effective PMQ's tactic when a Prime Minister can give that one-word answer, whichever way it is. But notably, by comparison, his answers when he was asked about a wealth tax and about extending the freeze on thresholds, thereby dragging more people into higher rates of income tax and raising more money for the Exchequer that way, were much less clear. And I think that will have been noted by people who are wondering what this government might do in that second budget.
Well, as you say, there are lots of commitments being made by the government and by Labour. Let's have a listen to Rachel Reeves talking at the CBI conference back in the autumn. This is what she had to say about tax.
Public services now need to live within their means, because I'm really clear I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
Now, Ellie, if we look back actually to an interview in The Guardian just last week, the Chancellor was asked whether she would rule out tax rises and said, I'm not going to, because it would be irresponsible for a Chancellor to do that. Lots of people are interpreting that as her really saying, look, because of some of the things that have happened, she's going to have to put up taxes.
Well, look, that's going to be a matter for the budget in the autumn, and I don't think it's sort of helpful several months out of that to start speculating about what may or may not be in the budget when it comes in the autumn. Obviously, decisions that are made in Parliament have an impact on what then is in budgets. But, I just don't think it's helpful to sort of start writing that budget
But it's sort of
now.
it's quite clear, isn't it, what direction it's going in here? Because of that, not bringing in those welfare changes, that's £5 billion that's going to have to be found. We've heard some of your colleagues in the Cabinet saying there are going to be consequences because of that. Of course there are.
Well, of course there are consequences of decisions that we make in Parliament. But, I don't want to get into, at this stage, what may or may not be in the budget. The world is quite a volatile place at the moment. We don't know where we will be in the autumn as well. So I just don't think it's sort of sensible. What I would say is that when we came in last July, we took steps to stabilise the economy, and we've seen, for example, interest rates go down 4 times since we came into office. As a result, many people paying less in their mortgages. The start of this year, we were the fastest growing economy in the G7. So these are because of decisions that we took when coming into government. The Chancellor will be looking at all of these things very, very closely before setting out the budget.
You must be worried about some economists talking about the black hole being bigger than the £5 billion, that because of growth not really filling that gap, the Chancellor's going to have to find billions more. And already a lot of your colleagues are discussing, including former Labour leader Neil Kinnock, how you're going to do this. Whether it's a wealth tax, whether it's, extending that freeze on personal tax thresholds. People are talking about this in your party.
Of course. And, people will talk about these things because things that happen in Parliament do have consequences. But it's for the Chancellor to set out the budget in the autumn. But because of decisions we made at the budget last year, for example, we were able to put that record investment in the NHS. As a result, 4 million extra NHS appointments delivered, waiting lists coming down. Those are choices. And the choices that we make in the budget will be based on Labour values.
Kevin, if they do go down this route of extending that freeze on the personal, tax thresholds, they're learning from you, aren't they? I mean, you started this. It was a massive
yes, we did,
rise in
and
taxes.
we saw that as being the most progressive, the fairest on the lowest paid, as a way to collect more tax because we need to pay money back that we spent during the COVID problems, £500 billion put into our economy. But what Ellie is saying, if I can try and interpret what she's saying, is choices we're making in Parliament. What the choice is, we're talking about the Labour backbench rebellion last week, which stopped the reforms to welfare. That's created the £5 billion black hole. The reality is now the conversation that you hear from Ellie and others is saying, OK, well, choices have been made, therefore we've got to reflect some other choices that budget. That's about more tax. And the reality is, if you're going to fill that hole, the equivalent of a penny on income tax, that's about £6 billion. That's the level of money you are talking about. So the reality is, because of the choices they have made, that's what we're going to see. We're also going to see, and what we heard today from Kemi in Prime Minister's questions, we're going to see the state pension being taxed from 2027 because of that freeze on thresholds. That's the reality.
Your party did start this. This was the road that you went down, was to freeze those. It's a stealth tax, is what people call it. It's sneaky.
Well, no, that I don't accept that. It was very clear what we were doing. Stealth tax are things you don't mention in the budget. Rishi Sunak, when he did this, was very clear. But he felt, and other economists agreed, is the most progressive way, the fairest and the lowest paid, is to freeze those thresholds.
So if Labour extended for those 2 years, you think that's...
I think that's wrong. What we're also committed to do...
But when you did it, you're saying it was the right thing to do.
It was at that time, but we never brought in the state pension within that regime. So the state pension was never taxed. What Rachel Reeves has decided to do is freeze those thresholds, which will, from 2027, for the first time ever, see pensioners paying tax on their state pension. That is entirely wrong and the wrong choice.
Isn't it more progressive just to raise the rate of income tax?
No, it's not more progressive to do that because, as I say, the lowest paid don't benefit as much from that. So the most progressive way is a freeze on thresholds, but that you've got to be sensitive about which thresholds you raise. Now, we're in a completely different world now to the days of COVID, of course. I can't say what our choices would be right today in terms of how we tax and spend, but I cannot...
You would have to raise taxes, though, wouldn't you?
No, I don't think we need to raise taxes. That's the whole point. And Keir Starmer, time and time again, does not tell the truth. We would put more money into the NHS. That's what we committed to do. But we pay for that through welfare reform, which our party would have voted for if it was the right kind of reform. And you pay for that by productivity improvements in the public sector. The public sector is about £50 to £60 billion a year less efficient than it was in 2019. And yet what Labour chose to do, when they settled those pay claims with those doctors and nurses, they said, no strings attached. Have what the unions have asked for, no strings attached. They could have asked for productivity improvements, which would have paid a great deal towards those extra payments given to those doctors and nurses, which I'm not saying they don't deserve, but you've got to make the system
We'll come
more
on to discuss that in just a second. But, is that the point here, that, you need to get growth and it's not happening?
Well, we're fastest growing economy of the G7
in the economy contracted by 0.3% in the last
But, in this point about pensioners that you raise, we've committed to the triple lock. It's unclear where your leader is on this, but because of our commitment to the
lots of economists say it's completely unsustainable.
Because of our commitment to it, pensioners will be £1,900 better off by the end of this Parliament. It's not clear where the Conservatives now are on that.
We put the triple lock in place, Ellie.
Well, it's unclear whether you're still committed to it now. We have made clear...
Do you think it is still the right thing to stick to? There's been a couple of reports this week saying that actually it's just pie in the sky. You're not being honest with people. In the long term, it is just not sustainable.
Well, it's something we set out in our manifesto and something that we're committed to, and pensioners will be better off by the end of this Parliament as a result.
But do you think you're being honest with people about the trade-offs here?
I think we have been honest. I've come on your show and said that there are consequences to things that happen in Parliament. I don't think it's sort of helpful to, at this stage, several months out from a budget, to say what may or may not be in it. Things may change in the global economy before we even get to that place. But, we said in our manifesto also that we wouldn't put up VAT, employees' national insurance, income tax. And, the Prime Minister has reaffirmed that commitment today. And I think that's really important. And that's honesty about, what we said we would do and what we have done.
Kevin, I had your former colleague David Gork on the programme a little bit earlier. He's done a report into the triple lock saying it's just not sustainable. And really, he was saying that all politicians, and he does accept he's outside politics now, it's easier to say, but it's fairy tale stuff.
I don't agree with that. I think there's three things you can do if you want to pay for all this stuff. Actually, one of which you agree on, which is grow the economy. But you've got to reform welfare. The welfare budget is completely unsustainable. So particularly in terms of personal independence around things like mental health and anxiety, this kind of stuff is just not affordable. You've got to get the public sector be more productive, but you've got to grow the economy. Now, the Prime Minister said today that business confidence was at a high. There was a report by the accountancy firm BDO. It was a survey of 4,000 businesses. The business confidence is at a 13-year low, lower even than COVID. And if you don't believe me or Keir Starmer or even BDO, go and talk to your local businesses. Go and talk to the landlords of your local
your local businesses?
The reality is they're very lacking.
And, I mean, are they confident?
Yeah, look, I speak to my local businesses. One of the things they're concerned about is the high street, which is why we're putting more neighbourhood police on the streets. That's something that they raise with me quite regularly. But look, we are working to grow the economy. We've taken difficult choices since coming into government. I regularly speak to my local businesses and actually look at the investment that is coming into the country. £120 billion worth of investment since we came in to government. I just don't accept this idea that there's a lack of business confidence when you've seen those levels of investments coming in since the election.
Just look at the recruitment numbers, Ellie. There's about 300,000 fewer people on payroll. There was 106,000 reduction in people on payroll last month. You're completely oblivious and denial to what's actually going on in those businesses around this country. Go and talk to some of them. You'll find out the truth. We were at a reception last night for the hospitality sector. They're in a terrible state. And we really need to provide some support for those businesses right now.
We need to move on. Kemi Badenoch mentioned there the NHS and the doctor strike. Where are we on that?
Well, very significant development, actually, just in the last little while, Vicky. Yesterday, the British Medical Association voted for its resident doctors, formerly known as junior doctors, to strike over pay. 90% of those who voted, on a turnout of 55%, backed strike action. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, was this morning urging them not to go ahead with the strike. Well, now, and this is the new development, we have the dates for that strike. It will be a 5-day strike beginning at 7 a.m. on July the 25th, so just over 2 weeks' time, and lasting until 7 a.m. on July the 30th, and that's the NHS in England.
OK, well, we are joined now by Dr Ross Nevote, who's co-chairs the Resident Doctor Committee for the BMA. I mean, there will be patients hearing that news and feeling pretty devastated.
Yes, there will. And this is a terrible situation that could have easily been avoided if Wes Streeting had come to us during the ballot period or before the ballot period and start negotiations to restore the confidence in the membership that this journey to full pay restoration that he promised is actually going to happen. Because if you start a journey, stop at the first lay-by, that's not a negotiation. And at the moment, and the reason why we called out these strikes is because we met with him, and unfortunately there wasn't sufficient progress. He offered no additional pay whatsoever for a pay dispute. And that puts us in a really difficult situation when we have a significant portion of the membership saying that it's not good enough and that they need more progress towards.
But there will be
that pay.
people watching this who might have a hospital appointment for those days, and they might have been waiting for that for a very long time. A lot of them could well be in a lot of pain. What do you say to them?
So I'd say to them that I do genuinely sympathise. And doctors aren't exclusive from patients. I'm a patient. My family are patients. We're all patients, and no one wants strikes. Doctors don't want to strike. What they want is to see that progress happen. And unfortunately, that just hasn't been met.
I mean, you were awarded a 22% pay increase last year, and now you're asking for 29%, is that right?
We're not asking for 29%. We're asking for legitimate progress to restore that.
So how much are you asking for?
So, yeah, well, that's a conversation I'd love to have with Wes Streeting if he's willing to come to the table and negotiate, because there does not have to be a single day of strike action. There doesn't. It can be avoided now. Even though we've announced the strike dates, we are willing to
But you must have some idea of what you're asking for.
The last point.
For this year?
I'm probably not going to negotiate on live television, but this is a conversation that I think would be very, very good for Wes Streeting, his team and my team to sit down.
He will feel that they did this. They did it last year. You got a 22% pay increase.
On the provision that it was the first step in the journey to restoring our pay. And the second step doesn't look very big, because at that rate, 1% above inflation, it would take about 2 decades to restore our pay. And that's not progress that our membership is willing to accept.
OK, well, we haven't got Wes Streeting, but we do have Ellie Reeves here. I mean, last year when this pay rise was given, Wes Streeting very much lauded it as this is the end of strikes. We've solved this. I mean, that seems to have been pretty naive.
Well, I think these strikes are unnecessary and unacceptable. There was that pay deal last year. Resident doctors have been offered a pay deal for this year, which is the highest pay settlement across the public sector. It's over 5.5%, greater than any other public sector worker. I don't think patients support these strikes. I don't want to see them. I know that the Health Secretary has talked about working with resident doctors about their working conditions and seeing if they can move forward on some of that. But I don't think these strikes are necessary or acceptable, and they're certainly not in patients' interest.
I mean, isn't the problem that resident doctors will think, well, it worked last time? You know, we got a massive pay rise, so we'll do it again.
Well, I think it's disappointing the action that has been taken, and actually if you look at the ballot, less than half of resident doctors have voted for this strike action. There is still time for resident doctors to think again, and I hope that they will.
Ross, are you confident that there are doctors who want to go down this path again? I mean, it was a 55% turnout, but, you know, as Ellie says there, it was less than half who voted for this.
So what the data shows is that 9 out of 10 doctors that voted to strike, that voted in this ballot, voted yes to strike on pay.
Yes, but only 55% of those who could vote voted.
And that's in context of incredibly restrictive trade union laws that make it very difficult to actually get a mandate in the first place, but also the fact that due to tremendous failures in workforce planning, there are many doctors that are worried that they won't even have a job in August. And in that scenario, when you're not even sure you're going to have a job, you may not be very willing to return a ballot to increase your pay on a job you won't have. And so they're multifactorial and they all feed into each other. There are a number of failures that the doctors are really concerned about that we need to address. And one of them that's been heard loud and clear is that they are unhappy with the progress that's been made on restoring our pay. And that's where we are right now. And as I said, they can be called off. A doctor does not need to start on £17 an hour. They could be paid £23 now, and that's not unreasonable, especially when you consider the fact that they are currently paid less than a physician associate who's starting out significantly. And even if their pay was restored, they would still be paid less. When you talk,
just to say, you talk about restoring pay here, don't you? I mean, you get that figure because you measure inflation according to retail prices index. It's a bit technical, but if you use the consumer prices index, which is what the government uses and what a lot of statisticians use, your pay has still fallen, but it's fallen by 4.7%. So it's nowhere near that level that you say it is.
So it's interesting you say that because the government doesn't exclusively use CPI, right? They use RPI for student loan interest. They use RPI for rail ticket prices. They still use RPI for some index-linked government bonds. They're still using RPI when it suits them, but when we're having pay discussions, suddenly it doesn't suit them anymore.
So what are you going to do now? Because Wes Streeting says he's not going to negotiate with you.
Well, obviously, I'm incredibly disappointed with that statement. And you know, there's still time for him to change his mind. There's still time for him to come with the same willingness that he came with last year to settle the dispute before a single day of industrial action has to happen. And this is completely within his power to call off, and we're waiting for him to walk through the door that we are leaving open for him to negotiate with us.
He's got 2 weeks to change his mind, Ellie, otherwise there's going to be strikes, week of strikes.
Well, look, you know, since the election, we've worked really, really hard to fix the NHS, delivering those 4 million extra appointments, bringing waiting lists down, giving residents, doctors a significant pay rise. So I do think that this strike action is unnecessary and unacceptable.
OK. Henry, can we quickly talk about another issue, which is the infected blood scandal? And there's been a development on that as well today.
That's right. This just come out in the last few minutes. This is the infected blood scandal. And I think scandal is now, by wide acknowledgement, the right word, whereby more than 30,000 people were infected with HIV and hepatitis C in the 70s and 80s after being given contaminated blood products during medical treatment. There was an inquiry into that. The government said it would pay compensation. So Brian Langstaff, who chaired that inquiry, has now said that in a sort of additional report that those victims of the scandal have been harmed further, his words, by the long wait for compensation, and that there are obvious injustices in the way the government has approached the compensation scheme over the past 12 months. So this is on this government's watch, and it'll be interesting to see how they respond.
So, Ellie, this is a sort of another example, isn't it, of the system moving very, very slowly and people just not getting what they're owed.
Well, look, we've made £1 billion worth of interim payments before the scheme was introduced. I think £300 million worth of payments since the scheme was introduced. And I think there'll be a statement, ministerial statement issued today from the Paymaster General about steps that can be taken to speed up those payments.
Do you think that they should be? I mean, we see this
of
more,
course.
like we've seen it with the post office scandal as well, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, I've got constituents affected by the contaminated blood scandal. They've been treated horrendously over the years, and there are some parallels here with the post office scandal. One thing that's missing, and I've always said this when we were in government, when we were looking at these compensation schemes, and I said the same to Ellie in her government, the one thing's missing from these compensation schemes that was incredibly effective in the post office are fixed sum awards. So at the moment, what has to happen in all these things, you have to fill a detailed assessment. Fixed sum awards let you just take a sum of money off the table, walk away. That's what we need.
That's all for today. I'll be back tomorrow at 11:45.